Hi there, everybody. Hal Weeks for Stalking the Wild Autoharp, coming to you with another interview edition of Stalking the Wild Autoharp, and this is one that I have been looking forward to. I'm jiggling so much here with my camera. I've been looking forward to this one so much for a long time, thinking about asking Doug Pratt to come on and be an interviewee, and for some reason I just never got around to it until now. And asked him a few months ago, and we finally got around to doing it. And I want to ask you to stick around till the end of the interview because Doug is an ornithologist or ornithologist. Doug is an ornithologist and he's a painter, and he's painted hundreds of bird images, and we have some of those images for you on the interview, and also links to his website where you can see all of them, and you can also pick up his album at his website, and I've got the link in the video too. So without further ado, here's Doug Pratt. Doug Pratt, welcome to Stalking the Wild Autoharp. This has been a long time coming.
Well, I guess it has. I don't know how long you've been doing this, but I was, once you told me about it, I was really looking forward to it. I'm glad we finally got together.
Well, and I don't know if you remember Winfield 2018 when I was
Yeah,
there and
yeah,
you were
I
there.
remember.
And I think that's the first time that I got to like interact with you in person. Did we meet at any time before that you remember?
I don't know. I sort of knew your name, but so you didn't come across as a total stranger, but I don't know that we had ever met face to face at that point.
That's one of the exciting things about um, doing this, and also, and I'm sure you'll agree, the auto harp community is that we all kind of know each other in advance,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Well, you've
um,
got cyber pluckers that kind of ties everybody together and the various festivals and
Doug is a multi-time winner of contests and probably a multi-time player of contests. Tell us more about all of your contest participations and what you've learned.
boy, where to start on that? Well, I spent most of my life not knowing any other auto harp players, and I sort of accidentally ran into a woman named Ann Norris. You may know of her
Mhm.
playing, and she came to a little music festival that was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I lived at the time, or just across the river in Port Allen, and they had an auto harp workshop, and I said, "Well, I'm going to have to go check this out." I didn't know any other auto harp players, and she was the teacher, and of course she heard me play, and she says, "Oh, you've got to go to Winfield." She had just won Winfield the year before. I think this was 2000, maybe. Anyway, so like I say, most of my adult life I was just playing off by myself, and so the next year I did go to Winfield, and I was encouraged because I made the finals. I didn't win one, two, or three, but I made the finals, and then so I was all excited for the next year. And I went and thought I was really prepped and ready to go, and didn't even make the finals. So you have to keep plugging away. But and then there was a gap in there, and I think I went one other time, maybe made the finals again. But I met a lot of wonderful people in those contests. Kathy Bertell and I were both sort of crashed and burned in a contest one year. I don't remember which one it was, and we ended up crying on each other's shoulders and became very good friends as well over the years. And so, uh, anyway, I finally decided to give it another shot, and it took me several years. And like I say, I had taken a new job that I didn't feel like I could take the time off, so I missed 2005, and so 2006 I decided to go, and I just practiced and practiced and practiced, and I won. Just on like the third try, I think. Although the second try I didn't even make the finals, so you never know. And it to some extent it depends a little bit on who the judges are at a given time. But sometimes it's just I've had quite a few cases of what I said, a crash and burn. Sometimes that happens, you practice and practice, and then you don't nail the landing, as they say in gymnastics, or whatever you do, you screw up, and so there you are. And anyway, and there's always the problem with nerves. I do get nervous. Even people who've played a long time get nervous, and so anyway. Um, Now, talking about contests, well, I will. One other piece of trivia about my first win at Winfield was I was playing an old chromoharp, the cheapest kind of autoharp you can buy.
Mm-hmm.
And the story behind that was that a friend of mine who's a banjo player in a little jam group that I had at the time was married to a school teacher, and she found this chromoharp in the dumpster behind her elementary school. They had been using them or not using them to teach music for quite a few years, and they just weren't using them anymore, so they tossed it. And he brought it to me. He said, "Well, I can't use it." And I stuck it away in a closet, and I don't remember what the situation was. For some reason, the main harp that I was playing had a problem, and I needed another one. And I thought, well, I'll get that old chroma harp out and just see what I can do with it. And I tinkered with it and fixed it up, and that thing really sounded good. And I don't know whether it was because it spent time in the dumpster or spent time in my closet or what, but it really had a terrific sound,
It
and it
was
was just the
marinated.
sound. It just, yeah, maybe so. I don't know. Like, well, they talk about Stradivarius violins depending on the sound because the wood had to float down the river of certain, all this crazy stuff. So anyway, I think I'm the only person to ever win Winfield with a chroma harp. But and I still have that instrument, and it still sounds good. It's actually a slightly a hybrid instrument because it had 15 chord bars originally. And after going to Winfield that first time, I said, "Oh, I have to have 21 chords on this auto harp for sure." So I had Pete install a set of his chord bars on the chroma harp, and but anyway, that's the story from Winfield. The other auto harp contest is at Mountain Laurel, the Mountain Laurel Auto Harp Gathering in Pennsylvania. And I have never won that one. And I think among auto harp players, it has a little more prestige, even though Winfield owns the title International Auto Harp Championship, which sounds really great when you're bragging.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but I've never managed to win Mountain Laurel. I've come in third 3 times, and I've come in second once. And this year, I thought I had a shot, and I did have a shot. But like I say, it just depends on the judges and what they like, and they didn't like what I played, so I did make the finals, but I didn't play. So that means I've got to practice up something for next year
Now,
again.
let's back up a little bit. Tell me, like, how you is auto harp your first instrument?
It is not. Um, I started out. My first instrument was actually ukulele, which I got when I was in the third grade. And my mother learned to play one song on the ukulele just to prove that you can do it. Little kids don't necessarily think they can do things like that. And she learned the Stephen Foster song "Way Down Upon the Swanee River."
Mm-hmm.
3 chords, and just strumming the chords. And once I learned that, well, I was off to the races. And by the sixth grade, I got a guitar. I was big enough to learn guitar at that point, and so the ukulele and guitar are my first instruments. And a little bit later than sixth grade, but it wouldn't have been much later, just a couple of years later. My mother was an elementary school teacher. I come from a family of teachers, and she brought an auto harp home one day because this was in the 50s, and she had just brought it home for my sister and me to play with, literally, like it was a toy. And I was just totally fascinated with it. And I, of course, just put it on a table and strum chords on it like you would, like it was intended originally. We had a big old dining room table, and boy, you put that auto harp on that tabletop, and it would really resonate. And so I love the sound of it. So I'm sitting there fiddling with this thing, and my dad comes home from work, and he says, and I can quote this to this day, I still remember it, and of course we're Southerners, if you couldn't tell. So he comes in, and oh, I should say, in North Carolina, the term for grandmother and grandfather is mama and pawpaw. So my dad walks in, and he sees me fiddling with this auto harp, and he says, you know, your mama used to play one of them things. And I said, what? Because I had never seen her play anything. And it turns out she had not owned an auto harp in the time that I had known her. I mean, I was just a kid, and she had apparently at some point had to sell the auto harp because she needed the money or whatever. I mean, you couldn't get much money for an auto harp, but I suppose back in the Depression, a few dollars was a few dollars. So we gave Mama an auto harp for Christmas that year. And she sat down and played tunes on it. She played pretty much in the style of Pop Stoneman. She played it lap style. She used a thumb pick and one finger pick, and she just played the tunes. And my jaw hit the floor, maybe not literally, but that just, wow. So again, I was off to the races after seeing that. And Momo didn't teach me to play the auto harp in the sense that, sitting me down and saying, okay, you do this, you do that, you do something else. She just played, and I watched and copied and just did things on my own. And so in a lot of ways, I don't mean any insult to Mama by saying this, but in a way, I was raised in the wilderness by wolves when it comes to auto harp playing, because I
But
didn't know any of it.
you had ancestral knowledge,
Well, that could be. That could, or
like
some genetic.
exactly.
People are born with talents for certain things, and sometimes they don't discover those talents. I always felt like I had a knack for the auto harp. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we called it, not a talent so much. But auto harp just suited me, and I got to be pretty good at it without really uh, getting any tips or anything from other players. Like I say, I was the only auto harp player I knew other than Mama for quite a few years after that. Anyway, so I had people that I listened to and learned from just either on TV or on records or whatever. And so that's how it came to be. But even right up until the year 2000, I still never knew another auto harp player,
Mm.
and I just took the idea from my grandmother and from seeing Maybelle Carter play with bluegrass bands and these other things, that it was fine to play auto harp in whatever setting you like. And I never, apologized for it or anything like that when I would play in jam groups, and people accepted it. And it was just only later that I realized, well, the bluegrass people don't really care much for this, but I take great delight in showing up at a bluegrass jam, and they see the auto harp, and you can see the thoughts, the wheels turning. Oh Lord, now we got an auto harp. We're gonna have to slow everything down. We're gonna have to do, yeah, yada yada. You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one in particular. I asked the fiddler if he knew Ragtime Annie, which is one that I play, and he said, yeah, we know Ragtime Annie. Well, let's play that. He said, and he looks at the auto and he says, "Now, how fast you want to go?" I said, "You just play, I'll keep up." And I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I've been a missionary for the instrument in a way. And I got a little respect from them after that. And I go to a bluegrass jam on Sunday afternoons pretty much every week. It happens every week. I don't manage to get to every single one, but I play mostly dobro. That's my other instrument, and I always say dobro gets me past the bluegrass police, and then I can pull out the autoharp for certain kinds of songs. But I
Hmm.
usually play maybe two or three in a couple-hour jam, but I don't overdo it. But it's fun to bring out, and I always get a big hand of applause from the audience because they've never seen anybody play an autoharp before. So
And you'd think people would figure this connection out because auto harp gets people's attention.
yeah, oh yeah, it does.
So you want one in the band. Two, auto harp, people remember the auto harp.
Yeah.
People like the bluegrass ensemble that's just a standard bluegrass ensemble. I mean, yeah, people remember that, but they don't remember that particular group,
Yeah.
but the auto, so you'd think they'd connect that with it and also connect. I think bluegrassers believe that they are the original mountain music,
Hmm.
and they're not.
Necessarily.
I've heard that bluegrass was contrived by Bill Monroe and Ralph Stanley to
Scruggs.
emulate what jazz bands were doing.
Yeah, that's probably true. Okay.
So, Doug, do you have any recordings that we should know about?
Well, I do, and we've been talking about the fact that I grew up playing in jam groups and bands and whatever, and I never was much of a solo performer. But so I had an opportunity at Mountain Laurel, even though I've never won the contest there. I did win the first Cohen Grapple recording grant. This is offered by Linda Cohen and Bob Grapple, I'm sure you know. And they provided a some money, whatever you call it, to
Mhm.
each year to people apply, and every year the grant is awarded to whoever has the best proposal. And it's a pretty substantial grant of money. It's enough for you to do a professional level recording. And so I saw this as a great opportunity. You have to have never recorded before, and you have to feature auto harp. Those are the two restrictions. And I made up my proposal, and I won the first one. And so I have the honor of being the granddaddy of the Cohen Grapple grants. Now, of course, I don't know where that's going eventually because the idea is to produce a CD. Well, CDs are practically extinct. And so, anyway, but one of the things I wanted to show on the CD was that the autoharp can be something other than just a solo instrument or an instrument to accompany voice. It can fit into a band just fine. So I had a full bluegrass band, had a mandolin. I think the only thing I didn't have was a fiddle. I couldn't find a fiddler, but I had a really dynamite banjo player, mandolin player, guitar player who was a professional and was really terrific. Um, and one of the best bass players I've ever played with. And we found a little studio in Raleigh where I live, and they were tickled to try to record this because they had never recorded a bluegrass band before or an auto harp, and they figured out how to put microphones on the auto harp to get the right sound. I was playing into a regular microphone in front of me, and then they had a microphone that was like a flat piece of plywood or something. It sort of, it was just a flat thing, but it was a microphone. And I have a kind of what I call a false back on the back of my auto harp, and they could put that in between that and the regular back of the auto harp. The thing was made to microphone the floor for cloggers.
Oh, okay, right.
So that's what it was. So they put that in there, and then you had the regular acoustic mic in front. And they had it fixed in their studio so that they had sound baffles to separate the instruments. So you got the separate cuts, but the band could all play together, which in a bluegrass band, you really need to see each other.
Hmm.
So we were able to see each other and play as a band and record it, and yet they could still manipulate, one instrument against the other and do
Hmm.
what they needed to do. And so I ended up with a CD, the title of which was "You Can't Play That on the Autoharp," and that title comes from a friend of mine, and I don't even remember who it was exactly who made the comment, but when I was in college and I was playing with a little band then, um, and I just offhand mentioned, or somebody mentioned the song, and I said, "Well, I'm trying to learn that on the autoharp," and the song was "Sweet Georgia Brown," and somebody, a friend, said charitably, "But you can't play that on the autoharp." And of course, I took that as a challenge, and so "Sweet Georgia Brown" is on the CD, and it turned out that that was the favorite show-off tune of the banjo player I had. His name was Trent Bouts. He very, very, very good on his instrument, and so I've got half bluegrass and then half other things, but I don't think there's a single cut where I'm just playing auto harp by itself. I at least have a bass or some other instrument that's with it. Uh, and I had my sister to sing with me on it. We grew up singing together, and so I always like she makes me sound good. I'm not a singer. I mean I sing and I can do harmonies in a bluegrass ensemble, but I was not endowed with a great singing voice. But when I sing with my sister, it gets better. She got the singing genes in the family. So let's see. I guess that's the
So
story.
tell us where is it still available?
It is. My joke is that my CD is a million seller because I have a million of them in my cellar. And the deal was you could get twice as many made for like just pennies additionally. So I ordered twice as many as I really thought I needed.
You
But
supersized your order.
I supersized the order, and I've still got most of them.
I want to, before we get onto the paintings, I want to ask you about your Warren Fisher.
Oh, yeah. Let me
Doug
show.
is a chromatic player.
Yeah, I'm a chromatic player,
Me too.
and I have this is an auto harp that was built by Warren Fisher. He's although he's older than Tom, he's sort of a student of Tom Fladmark's.
I'm going to ask you to adjust your light so that we can see it a little better. It's
Oh,
kind of dark on the front of
I
that.
can't see my image there, but yeah, that'll be better. Okay.
Okay,
Let's,
and I'm going to ask you to play it for us in a minute too.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but and we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, go ahead. You were talking about the harp.
Well, I got this auto harp, and the way I got it, I didn't win this one in a contest. I've won a bunch of them, obviously, all of that. But I was looking for a better auto harp than the chroma harp that I told you about. And one year at Mountain Laurel, Warren had several harps on display. And I had just been going around with a thumb pick and strumming chords on various people's auto harps. All the luthiers were there. And, you know, they sounded pretty nice, but I got to this one and I strummed across it and I thought, oh man, that is exactly how an auto harp should sound. And my taste in the sound of an auto harp is different, I'd have to say. And my grandmother played an old Oscar Schmidt, and it had a certain sound to it that I just had. I wanted the auto harp to have a little of that sound, but maybe be a little louder. Well, I got it in this one. I saw this, and I had won an auto harp that year or the year before, and I sold the one that I won and took the money to buy this. So I didn't get it right away, and So although I didn't win it, I almost did in a backhanded sort of way. And I have never regretted this auto harp. I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the microphones that I have this false back on here. I don't know if you
Uh-huh.
can see that. There's a space between. This was something that I invented back in the 1960s as a way of making the auto harp louder in a band. Um, it turned out that several other people had had exactly the same idea, so I didn't have the right to say I invented it, but I did because I didn't know about any of these other people.
Hmm.
So anyway, and my dad was a wood craftsman, so he made the first one, and I've made several myself. And my sister that I mentioned that sings, she also has a wood shop, and she's made several of these for me. So anyway, they do make a difference in the sound of the instrument.
Hmm.
This particular one is attached by Velcro, so I can take it off and show people the difference in the sound. I
Okay.
don't because it wears out the Velcro too quick.
All right.
So
Can you hold it up so we can see the chord bars and everything?
yeah,
So
okay.
Is Warren Fisher still building?
He is not. He has retired as of last year, and I think he built uh, maybe one or two beyond number 50. I haven't. This is number 23.
Okay, so while you're holding it, do you want to play something for us?
Sure, I can do a little something. So this is a song I picked up when I was living in Louisiana for quite a few years. It's a Dixieland tune called Muskrat Ramble. So, that's the, that's most of it. But the idea is you always keep that thumb going, and there's a
Hmm.
tendency for you to drop that fourth beat and play it with a finger. I had a guitar playing friend that was doing that. He was faking it, and if you're faking it, it eventually you get to a point where it won't work. In other words, you've got to do it right, and he
Hmm.
forced himself to relearn how to do that picking pattern, and he was much better afterwards. But I was always proud of making that correction. But all right, that's like what I call a forward roll, or you
Hmm.
can, etc. So anyway, that's one of my
That's
shows.
awesome. Can you do another one? Give us
Oh,
another one.
sure. Let's see. Let me think. Finger picking. I always tell people I don't do sweet and pretty, but I do have one sweet and pretty song that I like to play, and I'll play a little of that just to show you how you can why you need a chromatic auto harp. That's I guess that's what it would say. And I just played this a few hours ago at the little jam because a guy showed up who'd never been there before, playing a flute. Now we actually have another flute player, but she wasn't there today.
Mm-hmm.
So he was playing the flute, and when it came his turn to call a tune, he called this one, which is the song from the Music Man, "Till There Was You."
Okay, yeah.
And I'm here to tell you, I've tried to say this in a nice way at the jam, but it's a jam buster because unless you've got the chords written out, you just never follow it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's one that I have figured out I've been playing it for a long time. I did figure it out at some point. And so here's your C minor.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Um, another thing I wanted to touch on, and I always enjoy, this is one of the funnest parts for me. I mean, of course, auto harp, auto harp, auto harp, because we are an auto harp channel, and that's how we know each other. But I like showing people's other uh, worlds, um, in an interview, because that's the great thing about folk music is you meet folks, and folks have amazing stories to tell, and you have a particular um, skill slash profession that is particularly creative and wonderful. So tell us about your painting.
Okay. Well, this all ties into. I mean, things aren't compartmentalized entirely, and I'm a bird watcher to start with. I was as a little kid. I got I don't know why I got interested in it. I just did. I had an aunt who was something of a birder, but she didn't really have much influence on me. It's something I just picked up on my own, and um, it eventually. I always tell people that this whole bird business was a hobby that got out of hand. So um, one of the things I started doing in like maybe the third grade was drawing birds. I just decided, well, I like birds. Let's draw some birds. And at the time, I thought I could draw, and I could maybe draw a little better than the average person, but not much. I wasn't a talented sketch artist, for example. To me that skill is something that's inborn. There are people who just first time they pick up a pencil and a pad, they can just draw something, and it's perfect or pretty close to perfect. Well, I to this day I'm not a good sketch artist. Um, I don't go out in the woods and do sketches of birds. I mean, if I do, I get home and it's junk. So I don't do that. But I did learn how to manipulate the paint on the paper, and eventually uh, got better at drawing. Now, this, trying to make the long story short, I eventually became an ornithologist. I grew up in North Carolina, where I still live today, but I moved in 1970, I guess it was, to Louisiana to go to graduate school and to become an ornithologist. And I ended up stuck in Louisiana, so to speak, for 35 years. And I just came back to North Carolina because I was offered a job as the curator of birds at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, which is in Raleigh. I say it was a hobby that got out of hand, but I got, this may sound funny, but it's the truth. I got better at it than I expected to, if that makes any sense. That's kind of true of my autoharp playing too. I got better at it than I expected to. It wasn't a matter of wanting to be a international champion autoharp player. I just played, and same thing with the bird painting. But I basically paid for my graduate schooling with paintings. I was able to get paid for some other publications. I had some paintings in the Encyclopedia Britannica. People these days wouldn't even know what that really is, but that was a big deal at the time. And I've done several other books, including some that most birders are familiar with. So most birders have some examples of my work, and I'm still working on another book. I just turned 80, by the way. I mentioned being old, but my sister says you can't deny you're old when you're 80, so I guess that's true. But I'm still working on one last book. It's probably the last one I'll get done. But even though I'm officially retired, I'm still working at it, both writing and illustrating. I have a co-author that I'm working on who's helping me a lot with the text and that sort of stuff. If you want to find out about all these things, I have a website that mostly focused on the ornithology and birds and bird paintings. You can buy some of my original artwork there, and the site is www.hdouglaspratt.com.
I will put links down
Okay.
below in the video to all of your places, including where to get your CD.
Well,
Um,
well, the website's probably the place to get that too,
I
because
have a couple of questions about your paintings. First of all, what's your media?
watercolor. I do both transparent watercolor and opaque watercolor. They are different but related, and you can use both of them in the same painting sometimes. I
Okay, so
often do.
you're painting flat. You're down like this when you're painting.
Yes.
Um, and in looking at your site, I noticed that it's a bunch of pages that have compiled bird images called plates,
Yeah.
which I remember from we had the Audubon book when
Yeah.
I was growing up, the big um, and each page was called a plate. On your originals, are all those birds on one page, or did you compile that? Like now we'd say they were all photoshopped in there together,
Yeah.
but
Well,
that probably didn't exist back then. So,
and these days, that's the way I work too. But back in the day, like in the 70s or so, we were still using what's called four color offset printing. And so everything it had to be a single original. If a page of birds, you had to have a painting that looked like that page
mhm.
to start with. Now you could tweak it a little bit, but it was an expensive job and difficult to do, and the printers didn't want to fool with it, and so you were just told we want it all on one page, just
So
like
you would paint all those birds on one page.
they're on one page. Yeah. Um, and I still have some of those originals available, but uh, they, yeah, that's how it was done. Now today, I tend not to do that because it saves me a step in the process if I do a lot of the individual birds separately, and then I scan each one individually, and then I put them together, cut and paste, in Photoshop, like you
Hmm.
say, and produce what will be a page in the book, but there will be no painting anywhere that looks like that page.
Right.
It's put together from pieces. Now, one of the reasons I've started doing that is that over the years I've built up a tremendous library of available artwork. And this new book that I'm working on, I'm reusing a lot of the paintings from previous books, including the what is amounts to the first edition of this one. This is a replacement for an earlier book. It's not really, I hesitate to call it a new edition because it's so different, but it uses a lot of the same illustrations and a lot of the same text, but woven into new writing and that sort of thing. So it's a, you know, it was cut and paste, but some of these things are already done. So you can use the existing art and the new art and, you know, put it together and it all meshes.
So I noticed that they're not all North Carolina birds.
Oh no, I've done a bunch of illustrations for what's called the Handbook of the Birds of the World. Now, the handbook is, I think, 18 volume, you know, encyclopedia basically of all the birds of the world, and there are a lot of spin-offs from that. But I did a bunch of the
So
artwork.
you're not traveling to these places and stalking the birds in order to draw them and
No,
photographing
I
them.
started out idealistically saying I'm never going to paint a bird that I have not myself observed. Well, that's fine as far as it goes, but if you're going to work as an illustrator for a publisher who's publishing a book on the birds of you know, wherever, Korea, you know, just pull a name out, whatever it is, someplace you've never been. Well, um, you just do the best you can with research material. You don't necessarily have to go and look at the bird. Uh, I still prefer to paint birds that I've seen, but you know, you can't possibly do that. You can't possibly see everything you're asked to paint, and photography has gotten so good in recent years that it's almost like seeing it yourself. And I don't copy photographs exactly, but I use them as reference material a lot. I'd be crippled without bird photographs.
And these all have to be scientifically accurate, correct?
Yes, I mean I've always thought that being an ornithologist made me a better bird artist, and vice versa. In other words, I see things when I look at birds that most observers might miss because I'm looking for things that I would need to know when I paint the bird or if I paint the bird. My area of expertise in birds is the tropical Pacific. Hawaii, Micronesia, all the way out to Guam and Palau and Polynesia down to Tahiti and Fiji. That's what my first book covers, and the one I'm working on now is the same area, but you know it's 30 years later, and a lot has changed in that length of time. So we're doing a new one.
Doug, thank you for coming on Stalking the Wild Autoharp and giving your time and telling us your story. You're a fascinating autoharp player and ornithologist, and I really appreciate your being on Stalking the Wild Autoharp.
Well, it was my pleasure. I was happy to be asked.
So there you have it. That's my interview with Doug Pratt. I want to thank you for sticking through to the end and watching the whole thing. Aren't them birds something? I'm really impressed and loved getting a chance to meet Doug, he's one of our own folks, and he's one of our own folks. So thanks a lot, Doug, for doing the interview. You can see Doug's contact information, where to see his website and see more of those bird pictures. Pick up his CD too while you're at it, and we'll be seeing you around on Stalking the Wild Autoharp. Bye bye.